We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. Today is Sunday. We're moving through the weekend. Things kind of at a standstill. There's a few things happening that we'll be able to talk about. Fortunately, we have a bunch of emails that we can go through. I want to thank Christy for being on the program yesterday, Old Soul on the program the day before. I'd hoped that Ed was going to be on this weekend. I touched base with him on Friday, and he had something going. So he'll be back. Everything's fine. He'll be back when he can come back. I mean, he's a man in his 70s. He's retired, so his time is tight. I don't know what he's doing. He's moving around, traveling around, thinking about moving out of Tennessee. And from what I hear about Tennessee, that's probably a great move. Now, don't get me wrong. I like Tennessee. I've been to Tennessee. I've been to mostly Memphis and some smaller towns. It's a great state. It's unfortunate that the Trumplafucks and the Republicans are doing what they can to destroy it. Hopefully, after this election in November, the country and some of these states will get back to some normality. Well, Donald Trump is doing his damnedest as he's waiting to finish the trial in the Manhattan district. He's out trying to get votes. And honestly, it's not going too well. He went out to the Libertarian Convention, not Republican, Libertarian. And he was out there trying to convince them to vote for Donald Trump. What he found when he got there was a pretty negative crowd. They were booing everything he said. And I knew he looked surprised in the clips I've seen. He wasn't expecting that. You see, Donald Trump, as a narcissist, thinks everybody loves him as much as he loves himself. And that's becoming more and more apparent that that's not the case. In fact, most people don't like this guy. The only people that love Donald Trump are the base, and they are generally the dumber rednecks that he sees out at his rallies. You know, those rallies where he says there's 100,000 people and there's mostly about 3,000 people that have come there, and part of them have been paid by Donald Trump and his little group. But anyway, he's at this libertarian convention, and these people weren't favorable to him. Not at all. It did not go well. And this has really got to start hitting home with Donald Trump. Donald Trump was always able to whip up a crowd and get people laughing and cheering and all that sort of stuff. But it's just not working that well. And when I was talking to Christy yesterday and Old Soul the day before, I said, I feel kind of a turning point here. We've kind of been in a turning point for some time. For the longest time, when Donald Trump was president and shortly thereafter, it seemed like everything Donald Trump did, he got away with, and there was no accountability for anything. Well, that has been turning for some time, but it doesn't happen fast. It doesn't happen immediately. And I know everybody and their brother wants it to happen, boom, just like that. It doesn't happen that way. As much as you might like it to, it doesn't happen that way. But things are starting to accelerate now as we get closer and closer to a verdict in this Manhattan district trial. He's losing a lot of ground. He's losing a lot of cognizance, too. Whenever you hear him talk, he is hard to stay on track, hard to be clear. He slurs a lot. He's got all kinds of problems. And I'd hate to be back in the hotel room or back at Mar-a-Lago, wherever he is going to be tonight, after experiencing that situation with the Libertarian Convention. It did not go well. They hate this motherfucker. They're not going to vote for Donald Trump. In fact, one person in the crowd suggested that they vacate the chair for bringing him in the first place. Yeah, that wasn't a good crowd to go to. I don't know what made him think that that would work well. That's a little crazy. But as I've said, Donald Trump thinks everybody loves him as much as he loves him. And that's just not the case anymore. We'll be talking more about Donald Trump in a little bit. Pretty excited today. Today is my wife's birthday. She's turning 64. Now we're the same age again. So happy birthday to my wife, Cindy. And no better birthday gift. We don't give each other gifts. We go on trips. We do a bunch of stuff. We buy whatever we want and can afford whenever we want to do it. So the whole gift thing is kind of antiquated for us. We do a lot of stuff, so we don't need to do that. But she's getting one gift today, um, and that is that my son, my oldest son, and my granddaughter are coming over. We might go a little bit on the boat, maybe do some swimming, but having the granddaughter over, that's a big deal for her and for me, for that matter. And I know it's going to be extra special because every time there's a birthday or anniversary or something like that, our granddaughter Junie makes special cards. And I'm just going to tell you right now, she makes the most awesome cards ever. I've got a card she made for my birthday last month hanging on the refrigerator where it should be. So I know when she comes over tomorrow, it'll be fun having her around and hanging out. But she's going to have one of those special cards that she specializes in for grandma. And I know grandma will be very excited about that. So that's all good news. Anyway, we've got some emails. So let's get to some emails. First one starts out, Mike, I don't even know where to begin, so I'll start with the flags. Justice Alito is signaling clearly where his loyalties are. This is unacceptable. Our judicial system is supposed to be for everyone. I just finished writing to Senator Dick Durbin, who is chairman of the Judicial Committee, and let him know that I'm really mad that he's done nothing. Oh, my wife did that. Yeah, and my dog ate my homework. I also let him know that Clarence Thomas is also flaunting his position, a very odd one, at the approving of gerrymandering voting maps. Does he forget how hard people had to work to get the Civil Rights Act passed? Yeah, I'm sure he does forget that. Does he forget that his parents couldn't vote and he and his wife would not have been allowed to marry before that? Oh, he does, but the fact of the matter is he doesn't care about any of that. He only cares about his own pocketbook at this point. If this is how our system works, Jenny Thomas will never be prosecuted, nor would any of the people elected to serve who were involved. This roller coaster ride has worn me out. One day feeling hopeful that democracy will prevail. Then we have days like today when it seems that even the highest court in the land is against us. The call, the South shall rise again, sounds way too close for comfort. I will say this, Dick Durbin and Sheldon Whitehouse of the Judicial Committee have extended an invitation to Justice Alito to come talk to them about recusing himself from any January 6 cases. And whether he'll show up or not, I'm not sure. Some people say, well, what power does Congress have over the Supreme Court? Well, they do have some authority over the Supreme Court, and if he's asked to come, he should come. But we know about the arrogance in the Supreme Court. They feel like they can police themselves, and their manner of policing themselves is to do nothing. They believe they can do anything, and we should not question anything. Now, when you talk about the Judicial Committee and you talk about Congress, Dick Durbin doing nothing, you have to understand there's a certain limitation of what they can do. As long as the Democrats are in the minority, they can't really do anything. That's why we can blame Congress, we can blame Dick Durbin or Sheldon Whitehouse. But when it comes down to it, it's really up to us. And we have an opportunity to fix that situation come November. You give the House of Representatives a majority that is Democratic. You keep the majority in the Senate, and you keep Joe Biden in office. Then we can get something done. We can hold some people accountable. I have to believe the Supreme Court, the justices there, are feeling the pinch. They're seeing what the inevitable is going to be, and they're going to have to answer some hard questions, and they are going to be under the microscope, and some shit is going to happen. Maybe an expansion, maybe an impeachment. I don't know what it is. But I always hear that Joe Biden didn't do this, the Democrats didn't do that. If we don't have the majority, there is nothing they can do. We've got to give them the majority, and then shit can get done. Once they have the majority, and if they don't do anything, then you can bitch about it. But up until that time, they don't have the power to do the things they want to do. They can put pressure on, they can talk about shit. But if it comes to a vote in the House of Representatives, it's not going to pass because the Republicans won't do it. So blame Durbin, blame Sheldon Whitehouse, blame the Judiciary Committee, but it's really you and me and all of us. We need to do our work. We need to do our job coming November. Once that happens, then we have room to bitch. Email goes on. Next, we have Dirty Diaper Donnie spreading lies that the FBI intended to kill him when they went to Mar-a-Lago to retrieve the documents that belonged to the American people. That had been given, that he'd been given numerous chances to return. Eileen Cannon, hearing arguments that the case should be thrown out and releasing information about a trial can even happen. Her indefinite delay of the trial is obviously for Trump's benefit. His people are calling her a top member of his campaign. What? Well, I'm going to tell you something about that. Donald Trump saying what he did about Joe Biden trying to assassinate him using the FBI, he gave Jack Smith a gift. Now, a lot of us have been talking about why hasn't Jack Smith turned over Aileen Cannon to the 11th Circuit and get her kicked out of there? Why hasn't he done that? Well, because she hasn't done anything that would warrant that. Now, I'm not saying she hasn't done bad things, but a lot of it has to do with creating delays in the trial, the upcoming trial. And those things aren't appealable. So she stayed right at the edge. So she can't be appealed to the 11th Circuit. But now she's in a bit of a pickle because Jack Smith went to her with a pleading and said, I want a gag order for Donald Trump. He put law enforcement personnel in danger by the words he's saying. We need a gag order. Now, she's got a problem. She's biased toward Donald Trump. Donald Trump is going to lose his shit if Aileen Cannon gives him a gag order. So you would presume that she's going to step back and say, no, I'm not going to give him a gag order. That's what you would expect. However, if she refuses to give him a gag order, that puts her, like I say, in a pickle. Because now all of a sudden we'd have something that's appealable to the 11th Circuit. And once they appeal that one topic, they can throw in all the other shit. And she's going to get buried. She's probably going to get recused from the trial. I'm sure she knows all of this, and I'm sure she doesn't know what to do here. I can either piss off Donald Trump or I can lose my job. Which one's going to be more important to her? But Jack Smith noticed the opening, he jumped on it, and he put her in a no-win situation. So next week, should she respond to this, we'll see what happens. Now, if she just chooses not to respond to it, that's also worthy of appealing to the 11th Circuit. So she's in trouble here. If she's ever been at risk for being kicked off the case, right now is it. It's really dependent on what she says and how she responds to this pleading. She ultimately has to respond to the pleading. So it's a matter of what she does. And if she goes against Donald Trump and it can't be appealed to the 11th Circuit, or it doesn't need to be, there'll be other things along the way. Trust me. Jack Smith knows what he's doing. I've told you that from the beginning, and this is a perfect example of that. All right, the email continues on. In New York, talking about how hot he still was. So presidential. That's clearly one of the most important election issues the American people face. Then the promise made that the American journalist still jailed in Russia will be released right after the election because Putin will do that for me and he won't pay for it. The U.S. does not pay to have prisoners released. Let's not forget the deal he's offering the oil industry. No regulations if they give him $1 billion to win the election. My head is spinning. I'm sure he'll have some horrible message to put out for Memorial Day as if he even understands what it signifies. This being the guy who calls our fallen soldiers losers and suckers. Days like today make me feel as though we're about to run off a cliff and there's too much momentum to stop it. I'm not usually one to wish ill on anyone, but right now I'm wondering where's a sniper when you need one. I knew to expect the more desperate he becomes, the more outlandish and brazen he will become. but he's all but put up billboards with his intentions. It's scary, even for someone who keeps trying to believe that there's no way he can win. Even if he is convicted, he'll start a barrage of appeals and walk away free until there is resolution. I know you will have insight and knowledge to help me talk me down. Thanks, Mike, for being our island of common sense. Judy, Crazy Cat Mom, Oregon. Yeah, she's from the same state that Christy's from, that we had on the show yesterday. Look, Judy, you're falling into the same trap everybody else is. We can't win, and Donald Trump doesn't lose until he's in jail. That's just not true. That's just not true. Yeah, if he loses and he will be convicted, he will appeal and maybe he'll stay out of jail, maybe not. Maybe they'll see him as a danger and they won't offer him bail. But even if he is out of jail, it does not matter. You got to take it one step at a time. People act out of fear and they react out of fear. And that's not the way to win this situation. Look at each step and look at each win. The conviction changes everything. Multiple convictions change everything. It changed how people perceive him. It's going to cost him votes that he can't afford to lose now anyway. It's going to cost him status. It's going to cost him money. It's going to cost him everything. And it's going to fuck with his head and his physical state as well. Just be patient and take it step by step. We had people saying, oh, he'll never be indicted. He was indicted. People who were saying, oh, he'll never go to court. He went to court. Now people who are saying that he'll never be convicted. He will be convicted probably this coming week. And then they'll say, well, he'll never go to jail. Well, look, he's going to be 78 years old. He's going to be broke. He's going to be a pariah. Whether he's in jail or not doesn't make a difference. He will be out of the equation. He will be out of the narrative. We can worry about putting him in jail after the election. As I've said, I don't know that he's going to be the nominee, but I'll be honest with you. For the Democrats, him being the nominee may be the best gift of all because he can't win. People always say, I don't see how you can say that he can't win. Can't win. Well, I can tell you all the reasons why he can't win, but can you tell me the reasons why he can win? He can't win because he's got a divided party. He needs the party unified to even come close in the race. He does not have that. He doesn't have the full support of the Republican Party. He doesn't have the support of the independents, and clearly he doesn't have the support of the libertarians either. If he doesn't have unified support, he can't win. Or how about the fact that he overturned Roe v. Wade and 75% of the country support Roe v. Wade? Tell me how you win an election when you do something like that. And most importantly, let's talk about money. He's got big money problems. Hell, the whole Republican Party has money problems. And guess what? You know who doesn't have money problems? The Democrats and Joe Biden. The DNC has more money than it's ever had. Joe Biden has more money in his war chest than any other previous presidential candidate has ever had. Donald Trump is hemorrhaging money. All the individual states and their Republican parties are going broke. In my own state, they can't even fucking pay rent on their place. So what do? They look to the RNC for help. That would be the normal cause of action. Trouble is, there's no money in the RNC either because Donald Trump is bleeding that out for his legal fees. Do you understand how important that is? Say we have a close race in whatever district or whatever state. The Democrats can advertise and promote and put on rallies all they want, and the Republicans can't. You don't think that's going to have some impact on the elections? Come on. Of course it is. We've seen it before when people didn't campaign in the right areas or didn't have enough money to do it. You remember back in, I think it was 2008, when Barack Obama was running. A lot of the money went to Barack Obama because they really wanted him to win. And then in the in the local state, in the states for the Democrats with money, they didn't have as much money. And in that period, they flipped a lot of seats from Democrat to Republican, and it was about money. He has no money. The Republicans have no money. So then I would ask you, if you were sitting here, what is it that tells you that he even has a chance? What is it? And I'll tell you, everybody tells me the same things. Well, I heard on TV, or I got this feeling, or 2016. It's all emotional. It's all about fear. And that is the fatal flaw. You're scared, you're emotional, and you're coming up with perceptions that just aren't real. They aren't based in fact. So calm the fuck down. All right. Next one comes from Peg from the suburbs of Chicago. She says, I think putting your TikToks all together like you did is a great idea. I try to catch them on Facebook, but this would work out better, at least for me. Of course, we all love the regulars like Old Soul, Ed, etc., but you're killing it with your recent guest. Thanks again for all you do for us. Peg HM, suburbs of Chicago. Well, thank you, Peg. And for those of you that don't know, listener or a viewer suggested that I take the TikToks for the day and compile them in kind of a shorter version of the podcast. Not really a podcast, but it's where you can get it strictly in audio form. It's not a video thing. It's all audio. And this actually works out because I was thinking about doing some middle of the day podcast just to update everything that's going on. But this works out better because I'm doing TikToks in real time and doing it as things come out. And then when I can compile them and run them, it serves the same purpose of doing a middle of the day podcast. So that wasn't my idea. That was a listener's idea. And it was a great idea. It's a little more work for me, but what the fuck? I'm retired. What am I going to do? All right. The next one comes from Catherine. She says, this minority rule stuff has got to end. It can't continue. It's killing us. What can we do to stop them? Voting isn't enough. A $3 million or $3 million overage isn't enough. So what is SCOTUS won't help us. Well, I'll tell you what's going to do. Voting is what's going to help you. You give the majority to the Democrats in the House and the Senate. You keep Joe Biden in the Oval Office. The first big thing that we need to deal with about minority rule is get rid of the filibuster, because that's absolute bullshit and it doesn't work. It just wastes time and causes Congress not to do anything. So that's the first thing we can do, but we can't do that until we vote and give ourselves the power. See, you're under the idea that we can flip a switch or do something right now and fix this situation, or Joe Biden can do that. That's just not the case. As long as the Republicans, no matter how slim it is, as long as they have the majority or even a close minority, it's impossible to get anything done. So voting is the one thing you can do right now. If you want those changes, you got to get enough people supporting Democrats and what's real in this country. Otherwise, it won't happen. There is no magic fix. There is no ultimate power that the Democrats or Joe Biden can do. We've got to vote. We've got to get the majority in the House and in the Senate. That's what it is. You may not like that answer, but that's what the fuck it is. All right. The next one says, hey, Mike, in the middle of the episode with Old Soul talking about the wild child, Old Soul, you are an amazing human being. I would second that motion. I have been in education for 31 years, and you have the heart of a teacher and the brilliance of a doctorate dissertation. I just can't thank you enough for being in this world. We need more people like you. Maybe not the risk part, but definitely the huge heart part. Fuck Trump. Goes on to say, the dad that's less cooler than his kid, Dave. Yeah, Dave lives here in Minnesota. I met him and his daughter. I met him for breakfast, I think, early on when I started doing the podcast. And he's a cool guy, but his daughter, way cooler. Much like my kids and my granddaughter are way cooler than me. All right, the next one comes from Angie. She says, "Hi, Boomer. Prior to 2016, I was never one to really follow politics. When Trump announced he was running again in 2024, I really began paying attention. I've learned a lot, and I've always tried to follow what you say and stay calm and let things play out. But here's my question. If this country were stupid enough to elect DJT, he enters power in 2025. Can he pardon himself for anything prior or future cases being put off until after the election? Thanks for your time, Angie." Well, there's some question as to whether he can legally pardon himself. I would think there would be some court cases over that. But if you put him in as president, he can put everything on hold or get some things dismissed by putting a little pressure on. Fact of the matter is, you can't let him get back into office. The fact of the matter is, he's not going to get back into office. You didn't really make this comparison, but a lot of people do. Well, he got in 2016. He could get in 2024. You really believe that? We're talking about different times, different situations, and much different Donald Trumps. In 2016, we didn't know much about him. We didn't know all the criminality and the corruption. All of it came out after he was president and after he was out of office. What we know about Donald Trump now is much different than what we did in 2016. People are more hip to the criminality and the corruption. And you want proof? Just look at 2020. He lost the popular vote by 7 million votes, in spite of the fact he won in 2016. So if he lost in 2020 by 7 million votes, please explain to me how he made up those 7 million votes and got more votes between 2020 and today. He did nothing. He did nothing to gain those votes. He's done nothing but lose votes. You're sitting here all anxious about what if he becomes president? He's not going to become president. I feel more sure about that than anything. I really do. And it's not about me guessing or gut feeling or anything like that. It's simply looking at the facts, and the facts don't show any path for Donald Trump to win. It's just not possible. Too many people hate this motherfucker, and a good percentage of them are in his party. And if his entire party doesn't vote for him, he can't win shit. He's not going to win. People came out in droves in 2020, not because Joe Biden was a great candidate, but because they were scared to death of Donald Trump and what he might wrought on this country should he get reelected in 2020. Fact of the matter is they're more scared now at the prospect of him coming back. And if they're more scared now, I suspect that there's going to be even a greater turnout. And every time there's a great turnout, Democrats always win. Donald Trump doesn't have a chance. Whatever the polls tell you, whatever pundits tell you, it's all bullshit. He's not going to win. And I got to tell you, I got 2 days that are really exciting for me. And I'm hoping the first one is this week. I've got all kinds of people, Democrats and Republicans, telling me, oh, Donald Trump will never get convicted. I know for a fact he's going to get convicted. And when he does get convicted, I'm going to come out on that day and I'm going to call out those people. I'm going to giggle my ass off like a little girl because it's ridiculous. You're getting all up in your feelings and you're getting scared. So you go, no, no, it's not going to happen. It's going to happen. And you need to start going through life like that. Be confident, be strong. Don't be weak. Don't be whiny. Don't be the victim. You get nothing by doing that. All right. The next one comes from Catherine again. She has a couple. Now, these come from the podcast page. She says the smart minority rule thing. I already read that. That came from another one. Catherine says, I listen to your show every day and enjoy it immensely, but I really love it when Old Soul is on. She may not have had enough sleep yesterday or the day before, but she was a firecracker today. She killed it. She did. She was pretty amped up. And, that's the thing. When you listen to Old Soul, you think, oh, here's this compassionate, loving woman, which she is. And she's so calm and sedate. You get her wired up, she will get emotional She's very emotional about things. And I always talk to her about it. She gets emotional about situations that really don't have anything to do with her, but it's part of this world. She is, somebody suffering through trials and tribulations or injustice or something like that. Not really attached to her, but, whatever. And that upsets her. And I give her credit for that. The thing about it is when she gets emotional, notice something about her. When she's emotional or angry, it doesn't change her thinking. She's doing what most people should do, and it's a hard thing to learn. Emotions aren't meant to control you. You're meant to control emotions. Emotions are important and they are a tool, but you don't let the tool run you. Even though she gets emotional, even though she might get angry, that woman's always thinking. She's got her head on straight no matter what because she's controlling the emotion, not the emotion controlling her. And that's an important lesson to learn. She gives us a good lesson there. And I've said it before too. She and I go about things differently. People say, you're just not emotional. Well, I am emotional. I am. Tomorrow or today, when my granddaughter comes into my home and says, Grandpa, I'm going to be emotional. Trust me on that. But when it comes to things I can't control or that I can figure out, I'm not going to get emotional about them. I'm not going to fear something that hasn't happened yet. I'm not going to fear something that I cannot control. It's just a waste of energy. It's a waste of emotion. And usually, when you worry about stuff, take a look at this sometime. Somebody once said that 98% of what you worry about day to day never happens. And then when it never happens, you seem relieved because, oh, you thought it was going to be bad, but it wasn't. Think about all the time you wasted, all the energy, all the pain and strife you went through worrying about something that was never going to fucking happen. Life is short. Don't waste it on bullshit. Be focused, be strong, keep moving forward. All right, we are going to take a quick break and we will be right back. All right, we are back on the Rational Boomer podcast for part two, and we have more emails. I always love the emails. Actually, when I have a bunch of emails, the show is much easier to do. We can talk about the bits of information and news stories that are going on. We can address the things that people want to talk about or have questions answered. It's just much easier for me to do it. It's almost like having a co-host or a listener guest on when I get the emails. So I enjoy that immensely. So keep them coming. Rationalboomer@gmail.com. Feel free to send me as many emails as you like. I do enjoy them. And from what I can gather from the listeners, they like them too. So let's give people what they like. Next one says, Mike, please keep doing TikTok podcast as I'm able to listen to you on my drive from the golf course each day. Also to grocery store and or home improvement store, etc. Hands-free driving, if you will. Let's keep up the great work, brother. Let's kick some ass in November. Alan from Kansas City. Yeah, we talked about that a little bit earlier about doing the TikToks and putting them in audio format and making them available as a podcast. I'm going to do my best to do that. I've done it every day since I decided to start to do it. It's really not that hard as long as I have the TikToks done. There may be days when I don't do enough TikToks, something happens, timing, whatever, or I don't have the time to put it together. But I will do my damnedest to have one of those podcasts up every day, much like I have this podcast up every day. Alan, thank you for your input. All right. Here's one from one of our international listeners. Hi, Boomer. Erwin from Belgium here. Yes, Biden is going to win the popular vote by far, but still, this is a doom and gloom email. Erwin, fucking stop it. I hope this doesn't disqualify it from being read. Now, I read them all. The path for a Trump victory is via the Supreme Court of the United States. Why do I say that? No matter how many millions of Americans in other states vote blue, it comes down to 5 or 6 swing states that decide the presidency: Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, etc. The popular vote does not matter. Well, it does kind of matter, but I understand what you're saying. In all of these states, the RNC is going to mount court cases, and they're going to appeal every one of them until they get to the SCOTUS. By the way, that's why Republicans are saying they're going to accept the outcome only of free and fair elections. Marco Rubio, Nikki Haley, and others said that. That means after all cases have run through the judicial system up to the Supreme Court. 3, SCOTUS will, of course, rule in favor of Trump, even if that means the most frivolous or ridiculous cases get their blessing. The SCOTUS of 2024 isn't the same as 2020. The various scandals, yeah, actually it is. It's the same one. Because Donald Trump put all those people in power. And then in 2021, when Joe Biden came in, he hasn't put anybody into power. So it is this essentially the same SCOTUS as in 2020, 2021. The various scandals like those of Judge Alito and the latest SCOTUS rulings like the one on the 14th Amendment are evidence that the 2024 SCOTUS is willing to install Trump as the new president like they did for Bush in 2001. So, of course, Americans have to vote blue en masse, but it is SCOTUS that will decide. That's why it has to be fixed now. It can't wait. I hope the Biden administration comes to the same realization. Well, I hope I didn't ruin your day. Well, you didn't ruin my day, but I might ruin yours. All of the best from Belgium, Erwin. Look, it is essentially the same Supreme Court. What you're saying is not going to happen. It's not going to. This is kind of what they tried to do in 2020. But guess what? Didn't fucking work. They tried to run it through Congress. Didn't work. They had the power to do it, but it didn't work. They tried to storm the Capitol. It didn't work. Erwin, I will make a bet with you. None of what you just said will happen. There might be some attempts and stuff, but you got to understand after 2020, this was a new thing. Nobody had ever seen it before. Well, we've seen it now, and it's failed miserably. Donald Trump lost court case after court case. It went to the Supreme Court. And frankly, the idea that the Supreme Court would allow or would be the one to put Donald Trump in office is ridiculous. Or when you got to understand how our governmental system works. Not only isn't Donald Trump going to win the presidency, but say he even did get to be the president. Guess what? He's not going to be able to do jack shit because the Democrats will win the House and the Senate. They're the ones that make the decision. He signs off on those decisions. He might suggest some things, but it's got to go through Congress. Or when that's not going to happen. I've heard all the horror stories, all the doom and gloom. That's not going to happen. You might as well tell me that he's not going to get convicted, that he's going to run the table on 34 felony charges. You're getting all caught up in your emotions. You're afraid. So many people afraid. Fuck that. You can't be afraid. The scenario you laid out is not going to happen. It's not. They may try to do some things, but it'll be much weaker than what they did in 2020. They don't have the authority to do it because remember, on January 3rd, that's when the new Congress takes place. January 3rd. And presuming we have a big majority in the House of Representatives with the Democrats and a majority in the Senate, what are they going to fucking do? They can't do anything. You can go with that. You can think that, but remember, you're in Belgium, so you're seeing it from a distance. You don't see all the things we see here. You're looking at Donald Trump as this impervious superhero that can get away with anything. If you were sitting in this country right now, seeing what's happening in this court, seeing what's happening at the Libertarian convention, seeing what's happening at his rallies, you would see that Donald Trump is fucking dying on the vine. He's dying on the vine, and so are the Republicans. All I have to say, Erwin, about what you just said is cool story, bro, but you're wrong. And when it's all said and done, you come on back here and we'll talk about it. All right, this next one comes from Sherry. She's in New York. Hi, Mike. I just wanted to share a quick thought. It's going to be interesting as hell to watch Trump's appeal after he's convicted in New York. I predict that he will file the appeal just in time to keep his ass out of prison and then delay the actual proceedings for as long as humanly possible because he knows he can't win. It will definitely be quite a show. Stock up on popcorn, LOL. Thanks, Sherry in New York. And I agree with you, Sherry. That's probably what he will do. And what I would say about Donald Trump regarding the appeal, I would say be careful what you ask for because you're probably going to get it. I've said this before about Donald Trump and these appeals. A lot of people think that when he gets convicted, if he's not in jail, then Donald Trump wins. Well, that's fucking ridiculous. That's stupid. The conviction is the win. The appeals and all that sort of stuff, he can do that. He can keep himself out of jail. I don't care about that. If he wants to push it out past the election, cool. He ain't going to win the election. So once he's done with the election, he has no protection. He's far more vulnerable. He's not a candidate for the presidency anymore. The Republicans will be tired of his bullshit because they got their ass kicked in November. He's not going to be important to the Republicans anymore because he does them no good. He steals their money and gets them no votes. So if he wants to delay it, go ahead, do it. But he's going to have some rules he's got to follow when he's on appeal and he's out on bail, much like he does now. Remember, he won't be the presidential candidate anymore. He won't be. And he certainly won't be the president. So he won't be able to get away with much shit. He will have far less support, and he'll be a private citizen in all regards, and he will be subject to all the rules. And we know how Donnie does with rules. Donnie's in for a world of trouble for the rest of his life, whether he likes to think he does or not. He does. He's going to be in trouble, and it's not going to be positive for him. All right, the next one says, hi, Mike. I have an important message for all Republicans out there. Yeah, sounds like Panzer. Since it was revealed that crooked Joe Biden has authorized the use of lethal force on President Trump by the FBI when they raided Mar-a-Lago, pretending that this is common procedure is fake news, a hoax, and a witch hunt. True, Republicans know that Biden went way further than that. He has on the ready 3 full aircraft carriers trailing Trump's plane at all times, 5 squadrons of B-52s flying above his properties all around the country, 3 full cavalry regiments of M1 Abraham tanks parked across the street from his children's house, and an unknown quantity of Navy SEALs hiding in every bush of his golf clubs. All that without one single military personnel in this country knowing about it. Happy Trigger Biden is just waiting to hit the red button. Democrats should know that when the FBI executed search warrants, they never ever came in front of resisting, uncooperative, threatening, mentally disturbed, drunken, or drugged people. And it's usually just like that, like a tea party. So why use any force? Answer that. Go MAGA, Panzer. You know, the interesting thing about this idea that Joe Biden is trying to assassinate Donald Trump. I was thinking about that. And I was thinking, you know, what if that were true? What if Joe Biden was trying to assassinate Donald Trump? Where's the problem for Donald Trump in that? I mean, we know he's looking for total immunity, waiting for the Supreme Court to come out with an answer for that. In that arguments in front of the Supreme Court justice asked Donald Trump's lawyer, so you're telling me that if a president who has total immunity got SEAL Team Sick to kill his political opponent, that would be an official act and he would be immune. The lawyer said, yeah. Well, if that's true, then Joe Biden has every right and full immunity to send people out to get Donald Trump. That's weird. Why would he be bitching about that when he said that that's the kind of power presidents have? Well, Donald Trump will not get the immunity. It's absolutely ridiculous. But this is how Donald Trump thinks. I want special treatment. I get to do everything. Everybody else has to follow the rules. That's how fucking stupid and childish he is. It's ridiculous. And Donald Trump, as I've said many times, let him talk. He'll just implicate himself or get himself in worse trouble. And he did that by saying that Joe Biden was trying to assassinate him. And I told you about that earlier, how Jack Smith has now gone to Aileen Cannon and says, we need a gag order on this motherfucker because he's putting law enforcement agencies at personal risk. And that's a legitimate complaint because of what Donald Trump did. Now Aileen Cannon has to decide whether she goes full Trump and is biased toward Trump and then risk being brought to the 11th Circuit and being recused from the case, or she pisses off Donald Trump and agrees with Jack Smith. She's caught between a rock and a hard place, and she is fucked, and it's going to be really interesting to see how she handles this. And if she chooses just to ignore it, still going to the 11th Circuit. All right, thank you, Panzer. Little sarcasm just for those folks who didn't recognize that. All right, the next one says, Rational Boomer, I've noticed that recently you have stopped mentioning the ending Citizens United needs to be one of the first things that the country must do. Citizens United is the Supreme Court decision which allows for legalized bribery of our politicians. In my humble opinion, this one issue is so very important to fix and save our Constitution and our country. It gives the very richest American citizens the loudest and most powerful voices on determining policy issues and denies the vast majority of the rest of us of our voices in the decision-making process. In fact, is a big reason why we are in such desperate situation now. I believe that this should be mentioned as often as possible because I believe that you, among others, are unique in a unique position to help guide our country on the path for saving our democracy. We certainly cannot count on the mainstream media to do their job. Thank you, Boris. Well, Boris, I did mention it yesterday. I talked about Citizens United. And I agree, it's an important issue. It's one of the most important issues. I think the biggest issues right now, the two imminent issues we have to deal with are codifying Roe v. Wade and straightening out our Supreme Court. But that would be third on the list. I think it's up there too, and I think it's important that we do this. But I just think the other two are a little more urgent. Not much more urgent, but a little more urgent. And as I said, Boris, I did mention Citizens United yesterday as something we need to do. All right. Thanks, Boris. Next one says, hi, Boomer, fellow Boomer here. I'm 62 and fed up. I am not gloom and doom, and why I listen to your podcast as well as many podcasts there are of the same reasonable thinking. I live in New Jersey, which is a blue state, but I live in an extremely red area. I am a blue dot. I live about 10 minutes from Wildwood, New Jersey, where the bloviated orange shitload had a rally Mother's Day weekend, for crying out loud. His numbers on how many attended were far off. First of all, the Wildwood powers that cannot read a calendar. That same weekend, there was a cheerleading convention, a car show on the boardwalk, and a volleyball tournament. There are many other events in the nearby communities. Also, it was Mother's Day weekend. So, yeah, there were people in the area, but not all for Diaper Don. My reason for reaching out to you is to debunk the numbers of the Wildwood rally. There were barely 20,000, and to commend your podcast. Also to say, go dark, Brandon. I kind of like the trash talk. I feel like that's how we have to play. Thank you for the calming and sense of normalcy. Retired teacher of 30 years and a strong believer in democracy. Blue Dot in South Jersey. Happened to be married to a retired teacher of 30 years. So I get where you're coming from, and I appreciate the input and being on the scene there and telling us what the facts are. They were talking about 100,000 people coming out there. That was absolutely bullshit, absolutely ridiculous. He said incredible amounts of people came out to the Bronx. It was more like 3 or 4,000 people. I mean, it is still disturbing seeing him get any crowds of people. But as Christy and I were talking about yesterday, with Donald Trump, when he gets crowds, there's a couple of things you have to consider. For whatever reason, he's paying people to come out. He's paying people to come out. And then the other aspect is he's kind of become like the Grateful Dead. He got these merry rednecks following him all around the country, showing up at these events. So if he's in Wildwood, New Jersey or Bronx, New York, you've got a lot of people not coming from those areas, just showing up because they got nothing fucking better to do. But thank you. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. All right. The next one says, Dear Mike, I just can't believe that the presidential debate of Orange Boy versus POTUS Biden is on my birthday. And I'm just waiting to see Dirty Diaper dozing Orange Boy on television. I was so happy to hear when Stormy Daniels was on the stand and testifying against Mr. 45 while explaining everything about her encounter with Trump back in the day. I'm just shocked at the behavior of Orange Boy's criminal trial and how he's always sleeping and farting during the court trial. And I can't imagine all of the attorneys, juries, and lawyers have to be around him on a weekly basis to involve themselves in this horrible behavior. Out of the million times that I have heard him say that he wants to testify in his hush money case trial in NYC, he decided to chicken out and not testify about his crimes. But I didn't know there were 4 more classified documents at Mar-a-Lago ever since I saw a TikTok video after I came back from work. Goes on to say, I'm sorry for taking a long time to email you in the Rational Boomer podcast. I've been going through a lot in my life right now and trying to find my niche in this crazy world while doing my own self-advocacy for myself in terms of employment as a creative artist by trade. I went to the Florida Keys with my parents a long time ago, and I was like, the Keys was the best place to just chill and relax on the beach. Trevor. Trevor's, I think, is in Washington or Oregon. He's been on the show before. Hope things are going well, Trevor. Thanks for the email. Keep them coming. Next one says, Hi, Mike. The other day you were speaking about training your mind to think a certain way, like thinking rationally and not getting too emotional. And yes, it does take time and effort. I started doing this when I was 20 years old and in the military. I started doing self-analysis to determine why I was feeling differently at various times, and it really helped me understand myself better. And up to that point, I was very shy around girls and I had very few dates. I was getting tired of being so shy with the resulting loneliness. So one day, I just told myself, we're all in the same boat, so there's nothing to be shy about. I changed my attitude overnight, and within a month, I had my first serious girlfriend. Now, after college, I got a job in another state, and things weren't going great on meeting new women. Then one day I told myself that no matter what, everything was going great. I had such a positive attitude, and within a day, I had another girlfriend. During my career, I adopted the mantra that it is what it is, so deal with it. That turned me into an analytical problem solver. I never panicked. I knew that I could always find a solution if I stayed calm and fully analyzed an issue. I trained my brain to do a 5-step process. Stop, look at all factors surrounding an issue, ask questions, and listen to input from others. Think about the best approach and then act on it. Stop, look, listen, think, and act. And the people on my teams picked up on that. They stated many times that if I wasn't panicking, then there was no need for them to panic. And that made the various teams very successful. My best friend growing up trained himself to think negatively about everything. He could only see the downside of things because that's how he trained his mind to view everything. He became the glass half empty guy, the grumpy old man, while I was always the glass half full guy. So, yes, I truly believe that we can train our minds to be who we want to be. I'm going to tell you what I tell everyone I meet, and I truly mean it. Have an awesome day. That's Joe. And Joe has been on the show before, too. I don't know if you remember that. He's from Chicago, I think. And I like the email. I think you put it in better terms than I have up to this point. I mean, the fact of the matter is we make our own luck, we make our own lives, we make our own destiny, if you will. If you're thinking negatively and you're whining and crying and always scared, this is what you're destined to deal with. The confidence part of it is the key to everything. Give yourself the credit to know that you're a reasonable person with some abilities. Be confident about things. You know, when I walk up to somebody, I've learned how to read people, and we've talked about that before. If I read somebody who's negative, I'm going to immediately step back from them because I know this isn't going to go well. If I read somebody as positive and outgoing, not even necessarily outgoing, but just positive and confident, they're always more attractive. Think about that. I've said this before when I was young and dating. I dated a lot of different, and this is years ago. I've been married since I'm 23. So, take that for what it's worth. We're talking a whole different era. But you could run into the most beautiful woman, but if she has a dark soul or man, depending on what your interests are, um, if they have a bad personality, a negative personality, or a dark soul, they just aren't as attractive. Then you can run across somebody who's very plain and has this outgoing, great attitude and great personality. They immediately become more attractive. So if you look at that situation, you realize you do have control over what people perceive you as and what your destiny is and what your future can be. As I've told you before, and as Joe said, you got to train your mind. Whatever you're thinking right now, the way you think, that's how you trained your mind to think. And if you can train your mind to think like that, theoretically, you can train it to think differently. But you have to do it. You have to use mantras or just fool yourself in your mind. If you're more confident, more sure of yourself, more positive, that's what you're going to get back. And I say this not as some parlor trick that I've heard and that I'm going to tell you and then it doesn't work. I'm telling you this because just like Joe, I've done the same thing. I've been one way when I was younger. I chose to do something different and it's worked. It's worked. As I told you, when I first had the idea of going on TikTok and doing a podcast, a lot of people thought I was crazy. Oh, that could never happen. You're too old. But in my mind, I knew I could do it. And I just kept doing it. Didn't happen overnight, of course. It took me a long time. I had to be diligent and determined and keep doing it, be consistent. But all along the way, I knew I could do it. And you know what? Through that whole process to get to where I am now, it's always been an improvement every day. I never faltered, get a bunch of followers or peers, and then it drops off because it's a bad week. In terms of TikTok, and I only say this not as a brag, say this because it illustrates what I'm saying. From the moment I got on TikTok, I steadily got more followers, much to everybody's surprise. Okay. I got more followers. And through the almost 4 years of doing that, it stayed really, really steady. I'm wondering if I was more positive, if I could do it faster, but I don't need to do it faster. But every year, almost like clockwork, in November, that was my anniversary date when I started doing TikTok. By the time I got to November, early December, I added another 100,000 followers, which is fucking crazy. It's crazy. I shouldn't have that many followers, but I do. And it was steady because I kept the same mindset, I kept the same confidence, and I kept doing what I knew I could do. Now, if a 60-year-old man can go on a kid's app and get some traction, you can do pretty much anything. Thank you, Joe. I appreciate the input and the explanation and how it's worked for you. And I'm not selling you anything. I'm not selling you tapes or books or anything like that. I'm just telling you what I do. And if it makes somebody's life easier or better, good. Next one says, "Hey, Mike, I know you know the answer to this question." Well, of course I do. When do you know Trump is telling a lie? His mouth is open. Absolutely. Until the media and everybody else puts the label on his forehead every day, the word lie or liar, he will continue. This should just introduce him, or whenever they refer to him as a liar, Donald Trump, ex president liar Donald Trump. It should be his middle name, Donald Liar Trump. I know and I realize that the cake is pretty much baked, and already the people that know this about him obviously are not going to vote against him. But the only thing that works with him and all Republicans, for that matter, is to shame them. Absolutely. Embarrassing him. So everybody is calling him a liar. His label is liar, thief, felon. The new lies he's trying to spin about Biden wanting to assassinate him is next level and trying to cause people towards violence. He's the projector. Mary Trump is now, which I think is great on TikTok, 160 some odd days until the election. It can't get here fast enough. Rhonda. Couldn't agree with you more, Rhonda. And you're absolutely correct. When you're dealing with mentalities and fragile emotional folks like Donald Trump and his followers, embarrassment is the key. Continue to expose him for the fool, the idiot, the liar he is. And I think I mentioned this with Christy yesterday. I heard a news report that once this conviction is in, or multiple convictions are in, come this week, then Joe Biden has full range to talk about it and use it against Donald Trump. He can't really talk about the upcoming trials because then it would look like he's influencing those trials. And that's a definite no no for a sitting president. But once the trial is over and there are the convictions, he can go after them. And I guess the word is that when those convictions come in, the Democrats and Joe Biden are going to ramp it up and shove it down his fucking throat. So this is going to be interesting to see. And you're absolutely right. It can't be just the Democrats and just Joe Biden. All of us, we've got to control the narrative, embarrass Republicans, embarrass Donald Trump at every turn. We've got to bury them in their own bullshit, the shame, because that's what they react to. I saw a video on TikTok. I think I mentioned it yesterday too. A woman was getting off a plane, and as she was getting off the plane, she noticed Marjorie Taylor Greene standing there. So she flipped on her camera, pointed it at Marjorie Taylor Greene, and she says to Marjorie Taylor Greene, "Hey, bleach blonde, bad built body, butch body." And Marjorie Taylor Greene didn't say anything. She just put her head down. And then the woman, as she's walking by, is taunting her, saying, "Yeah, you didn't like that, did you? You didn't like that, did you?" This is the kind of stuff that has to happen. We've got to immobilize them by embarrassing them. That is really the secret sauce. That is the kryptonite that these people will respond to or won't respond to, but it will kill them at every time. And Donald Trump is the worst of them because he is a narcissist. The embarrassment will be too much for him to take. He'll get louder, he'll get crazier up until the time when he sees there's no way out, and then he'll kind of disappear. I don't mean in the real sense, I mean just from the narrative. He'll be too embarrassed. The embarrassment will be too much for him. He won't be able to take it, so he will hide, or at least try to hide. All right, that's all the emails, and that's all the time we have. So I appreciate you taking the time to listen. It is Sunday. Monday, things are still kind of weekend because it's a long holiday, but come Tuesday, shit's gonna fly. And we'll be here to talk about it on TikTok and on the podcast. So I hope you have a great day today, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow.